So in our last update, we had cut out the ceiling tile with the proper curve radius, and now it was time to get the beveled edge put on it, sand it down, and then paint it. I used a simple granite colored spray paint, and this gives us a little bit of forgiveness when we put the ballast on, just in case we miss anything with the rock itself. Another thing we did was replace a section of the layout table that I had used some OSB on. It looked terrible. I know it would not work well, so we just replaced that with some nice plywood in there. The other thing I did was get to work on the other side of the bridge crossing, the river, if you will, and you can see it transitions between two tables. So I built a little bit of an extension just to support that side of the riverbank, and got that attached. Next, took some of my styrofoam pieces, fitted those in, and then glued them onto the layout after fastening the wood frame down. The other thing I did was weather some sections of track, just using a flat brown paint. Then what you have to do is come back through and with a wooden block, is scrape the paint off the top of the rail, so obviously you have good connectivity. The paint can always be removed later, but it's easier to do it when it's wet, obviously. I put the track on our newly cut ceiling tile, and before ballasting, I made sure to test everything. However, I discovered a little problem. In my skill building towards better soldering, I discovered one of the track joiners were off alignment, and that was causing the locomotives to derail. So I'll spare you the details of me cutting it with a little Dremel tool and grinding it down, and this will look better when it's all done. But after grinding it down and getting rid of some of the excess material and making it flow a little bit smoother, I was able to have the trains run back and forth and on both sides, and just fine. But that's why I want to test everything before we got going. Once everything checked out, forwards and backwards and on both sides, I moved on to ballast this section. I don't use any fancy ballaster, which I mentioned a couple times ago. This works fine. You just have to go slow and take your time. The section on the back of the layout, we got a little bit too fast on, and we paid for it because we had to come back and reballast and reglue a couple times in the section. But if you just take your time and go a little bit at a time, it works out pretty well. The other thing I did on this particular section is on those beveled edges, I sprayed some spray tack, which is basically a spray adhesive. It just helps the ballast adhere there a little bit better, but I found it worked really, really well. The process continued with wetting down the ballast and track, and I just simply spray isopropyl alcohol right on all areas to get it ready for the glue. And then I use a 50-50 mixture of isopropyl alcohol and Elmer's white glue to cement in the ballast, and it works pretty well. And even though I'm only going about 10 inches at a time, I found that in the very last section of track, I missed about 10 inches. So I'll have to come back and glue that, but that's not a problem. Once we were complete, it was time for one more test run back and forth on both sides, and everything checked out just great. So I'm pretty excited about that. Now we have about 8 feet total of track. As we start to move off towards the big section of the layout, I cleaned it off to get rid of my collection of tools and supplies so that I could start visualizing some track layouts. But for now, I could celebrate having a good section of track complete.